Medicare, Medicaid, and SNAP. You've heard outrageous claims that Republicans and Trump want to take these programs away, but that is simply not true. And I hope that if anything that you hear from me tonight, it's this. The president has repeatedly promised no cuts for those who qualify. Additionally, Congress is working to ensure that no tax on Social Security, no tax on tips, and no tax on overtime are accomplished through reconciliation. But here's the real issue. These programs are being drained by waste, fraud, and abuse. And that's what we need to fix. Even MSNBC reported that an inspector general audit discovered that Social Security Administration paid almost $72 billion in improper payments over an 8-year period. $72 billion. It's irresponsible to continue to let that happen. The DOGE team discovered that millions of people still listed on the Social Security rolls are no longer living. Some even recorded as being between the ages of 140 and 150 years old. Medicaid's improper payments have totaled $1.1 trillion in the last decade. The Economic Policy Innovation Center estimates that improper Medicaid payments could exceed $2 trillion in the next decade if left unchecked. $2 trillion. Even Joe Biden back in 2010 admitted, and I quote, "We waste a heck of a lot of money. 1/3 of Medicare goes to nothing useful. We have to figure out how to stop it from bankrupting the country." That was from Joe Biden. We must eliminate improper payments. We must stop the fraud and cut the waste so that these programs can actually work for the intended purpose and to serve the people they were intended for. The media has fueled fear and confusion, but this isn't about taking benefits away. It's about making them sustainable. Government efficiency isn't a partisan issue. Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Al Gore, Chuck Schumer, and others, Nancy Pelosi, have all pushed for it. Cutting waste and fraud isn't just a priority, it's how we will save these programs. Without reform, our debt will spiral, devastating our economy and our future. And I will do whatever it takes to ensure America's golden age flourishes. I'm excited to hear from you tonight. So let's get started. If you have a question, press *3 to be put into the queue. And I want to make it very clear, we do not filter anybody's phone calls. If you have a question, even if it's something that I don't agree with, you will get through. We do ask at the beginning of the call that you tell us the content of the question, just so we can. So if I need to get into the weeds on something, then I'm able to pull some notes to get into the weeds on some numbers, and my staff are here to help me with that. So again, if you have a question, please press *3 to get into the queue. All right, so let's start with some of the questions that were submitted on Facebook before today. So first question is, how will you cut $880 billion without hurting Medicaid? Well, it's simple. So if we go back to pre-COVID era policies that were put in place under Bill Clinton and Al Gore, policies that ensure that people with disabilities qualify for Medicaid, policies that ensure that elderly people are able to get, based on means, qualify for Medicaid, pregnant mothers, children, right? People that the program was intended for, that they're able to qualify for Medicaid. But what the work requirements that were put in the 90s said is if you're a young, able-bodied individual who doesn't have kids in the house, there's no reason why you shouldn't be working. Then we need you to demonstrate that you are working, or you are going to school to get a job, or you are applying to get a job. And that's the simple work requirement that was in place from the 90s up until COVID. But Joe Biden, when he came in, he issued executive orders eliminating those work requirement rules for able-bodied young adults. And as a result, that population is now the biggest population of individuals that are on Medicaid, are people that are able-bodied young adults. In addition, they don't even have to reapply. So you have people that may no longer qualify. Maybe they got a better job and their income is above the threshold, but yet we're not vetting individuals and asking them to reapply at any point. And so it's a program that's full of a lot of waste, and we don't want this program to be threatened, because we want the program to be available for people who are disabled, people who are blind, elderly, children, and pregnant mothers, for the people that truly the program was intended for. So we can accomplish $880 billion probably, and we can probably even cut more without having to touch a single benefit for those people that truly need it. Thank you for the question. And I'm looking, do we have any? Okay, we've got another question from Facebook. The Green New Deal was never implemented. Why do you lie to constituents? Green energy like wind and solar is used just as much in red states as blue. Have you ever driven through northern Missouri, Oklahoma, and Texas? No one wants to go back to the days when cities were polluted. You couldn't even see the cars in front of you. Why cleaning up the environment? Why is cleaning up the environment wrong? I'm not saying that we shouldn't have clean energy. In fact, I think that the data shows, and there's a lot of scientists that, in fact, the Biden administration did a study and determined that if we're going to, the most effective and clean, abundant source of energy is natural gas, which America is very abundant in natural gas. And so if we're going to have a clean future, I just think that we need to rethink our energy infrastructure and make sure that we're able to power the future. So let me put this in perspective. The European nations, including Great Britain, declared a war on their energy, and as a result, they've committed economic suicide. You're seeing manufacturers all have left European nations, including Great Britain, and some of them are coming to the United States because of the Trump tax cuts that occurred. Some of them are going to China. But at the end of the day, their fight against energy drove up energy costs, and manufacturing left those nations. And as a result, their economies are tanking. And this is important in the United States, that we return to a nation that is producing things, it's making things, and employing people to do so. So if we're going to do that, we've got to bring back manufacturing in the United States. We need more electricity. Right now, the grid barely can sustain what it's powering today. If we are ever to power the future, including electric vehicles or data centers, AI is a huge electricity hog. If we're going to move in that direction, we can't do it on solar and wind. We just can't. We need to return to reasonable sources of electricity generation that are clean, like natural gas and nuclear. And so that's my view. Okay, we have a person on the phone, Pat. And so you have a question.
Yes. Can we please get the names of the people who sponsored those programs that DOGE is finding that is gouging our economy? We need to know what congresspeople were responsible for putting those there in the first place so we can vote them out of office.
Thank you, Pat. That's a great question. So to give you an idea, I'm a member of a little pesky group called the Freedom Caucus. We're the very conservative members, fiscal conservative members of Congress. And we work together. We identified, in fact, this office alone, my office, my team, I'm not going to take all the credit for it. My team is amazing. We found 270 items in the federal budget in the 12 appropriation bills that we thought were very wasteful. And we sent letters to appropriations chairman requesting that those items be cut or eliminated altogether. And to give you an example, some of my letters included things like what DOGE identified I already knew because I sent a letter. For example, one of them was that we are sending money to the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum is a globalist junket that a bunch of billionaires fly in on their private jets and talk about how everybody needs to reduce their carbon footprint and eat crickets while they eat steak and lobster and caviar. I mean, this is a ridiculous event, and your taxpayer dollars should never go to fund something like that. But unfortunately, we were. The Biden administration was funneling tens of millions of dollars to the World Economic Forum and to fund the Davos event. And so I sent a letter, and then I sponsored an amendment to get that removed. Could not get all of the Republicans on board, and obviously all the Democrats opposed my amendment, and so did many Republicans. That was just one of 270 that I submitted. So we were very busy. Unfortunately, we couldn't get many of the votes. One of my colleagues is a guy from Arizona, Eli Crane. He submitted the amendment to eliminate all the waste in USAID. That was a year ago, before Trump came in, before Elon came in. We all knew that there was waste in USAID, but yet we couldn't get everybody on board. So I would encourage you, if you want to know who it is that really opposed a lot of these cuts. Fortunately, she's not here anymore. We had the chairwoman, Kay Granger, who was the appropriations chair. So I think fortunately she is no longer a member of Congress. She decided to not run for re-election, but she's the one that stopped all of our reasonable spending cuts from going through. Okay. So next caller is Aaron. Aaron, you're on the phone. Do you have a question?
I do. Yes, I do have a question. I would like to know why, if there is this amount of waste and fraud, why an unelected private citizen who has no qualifications whatsoever is apparently in charge of going into federal buildings, tampering with computers, and basically shutting things down with no authority from the American people. He is not elected. He is not duly appointed and confirmed by the Senate. So why is this happening?
All right. Thank you, Aaron. That's a good question. So to answer your question, the executive branch, there's only one elected official. It's the president. And the president has to appoint everybody else. The president gets to hire whom the president wants to hire. And that's, so the President Trump ran with Elon Musk. Elon Musk backed President Trump. And when he did, they campaigned on the fact that they were going to create the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. That was months and months before the November election. So the American people understood very well what Elon and Trump were planning to do. And when the American people voted for Trump, this is a man of his word. He keeps his promises. He said that he was going to do DOGE, and he's doing it. And look, we need it. I'm just going to be very sobering to you. We are in a very, very desperate financial situation in the United States. We're at $37 trillion in national debt. What does that mean? That means that each and every one of you owes, in your share of our national debt, over $250,000. Each and every taxpayer on this call. That's if we had to pay the debts today. But unfortunately, we're not, and those are being passed on to our kids and our grandkids. Now, we've talked about that for a long time. People have been railing against the debt for a long time. It used to be a problem that was somewhere in the future. We'll need to address the debt. That is now in our windshield. We're in a situation where we cannot continue to take out more debt, and we can't continue this very aggressive spending. Every dollar that the government spends that it doesn't bring in is is inflationary. Every dollar that we spend that's more than we bring in, we're printing money, and we're devaluing the money that's in your bank accounts and in your wallet. And you're not able to buy as much. So when you go to the McDonald's and you get a value meal and it's $12, I mean, I'm just as mad as you are, but sadly, people need to understand that the reason why inflation is what it is because Congress has a spending problem. So if you're going to get mad at Congress. And I'm trying to do everything I can on my part to cut spending, but that's the truth. There's been Ray Dalio, an economist, came and spoke just yesterday and gave multiple warnings. He identified multiple warning signs that we're potentially approaching a debt spiral. When a nation enters a debt spiral, we will lose the US dollar as the world reserve currency, and we will get to a point where other nations who've entered this level of debt, when Greece entered this situation, they got bailed out by Germany. There's no nation that will bail out the United States if we enter into a debt spiral. So it's not fun, but it's something that we have to do. And it's the responsible thing to do, not only to save this country, but to save it for future generations. So, all right, our next question is from Kim.
Hello?
Yes, is this Kim?
Yeah, Kern, actually. So basically, give me a sec. It boils down to this. What are we going to be doing with the nuclear focus to ensure that we're running on modern reactor designs? The three big nuclear disasters that anyone can think of if you mention nuclear disaster, 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and Fukushima Daiichi. All of them were built on designs that were finalized no later than 1969. And almost all the nuclear plants, if I'm not mistaken, all of the nuclear plants, period, in this country were designed in the 1960s. People are afraid of meltdowns and failures from these plants because their technology is obsolete. In India, they're using third and fourth generation designs like fast thorium breeders. Do you have anything that would ensure that any new builds of nuclear follow modern designs that do not suffer the same fatal flaws that we had from nuclear plants from the 1960s? Because we can't be continuing to do nuclear if we're going to continue to do it 1960 style. We're like 60 years past that.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments. It sounds like you really know your stuff here. I'm the chairman. This year I got appointed as the chairman of a subcommittee for oversight, and the committee is on economic growth, energy, and regulatory reform. And so we've had our first hearings related to the first hearing was stressing the need and the lack of electricity on our grid. And then we will have subsequent hearings on the nuclear topic, because this nuclear has become, especially small modular nuclear reactors, is a topic that is getting bipartisan support. The ranking member, the Democrat on my committee that I sit next to, Mr. Frost from Florida, he is as far left and progressive as anybody up here, and I'm about as far right and conservative. And yet we both agree that small modular nuclear is the future, and it's something that we have got to get to. And so we're having hearings and meeting with the multiple companies that are doing small modular nuclear. When I talk to the utility companies, I don't think anyone has any plans right now to build the large scale nuclear power, uranium style nuclear power facilities that you're referring to. So I think that the industry is definitely going to move on, not to just what's happening, the nuclear power plants that we have in India, but the future, which is small modular. All right. Our next question comes from Roxanne. Okay, Roxanne's question, I don't know, Roxanne, if you want to chime in, but when you called in, you said, can you clarify the qualifications for no taxes on Social Security?
In the beginning, you
Go
said
ahead.
something about being qualified, and I was explaining that I'm drawing my Social Security and I pay extra taxes on them, an extra 25%, but I'm still working and I'm paying, their tax on while I'm working, which I can understand that. But what is that qualification, if you could clarify that? If
Okay,
that
so
comes to fruition, the no tax.
if there's no taxes on Social Security, I believe the way that it works, and Thomas Massey has the legislation, I'm actually a co-sponsor, is that the money that you receive from Social Security, you would not be taxed on. And it sounds like you have additional income outside of Social Security, which is why you are paying a tax. But,
no, I understand
pay a
that
tax
part.
Yeah.
But you said
you
something about if you qualify.
Yeah, I think the way that if we were able to pass it the way that Thomas Massey's law entailed, if you have outside income, if you're still collecting a W-2 or other income, you would still pay taxes on that. But the money that you receive from the Social Security would not count towards any taxes. So
okay.
That's how that would. Okay. All right, we have Marie. You have a question, Ms. Miller?
My husband and I are both disabled, and we were taken off Medicaid for a spin down of $45 each. But the state would not consider that we are raising a granddaughter and a great-granddaughter without any financial support. So they say we don't qualify without paying $90 a month for the Medicaid.
Okay. This is a topic we'll be happy to get you in touch with the staff and follow up with you to get the specifics of this situation and to see if we can help you through this process. But yeah, in general, when we're talking about the policy changes that have been discussed up here, when it comes to Medicaid, in essence, it's a returning of Medicaid policy to what was occurring in pre-COVID. If you are disabled, we want to make sure that Medicaid is available to support people that have a disability. All right. Okay, we have a question from Facebook. Question was, America was never last. When was it last? When did we stop putting America first? Give me a date, an event, something you can't. It never happened. How are you suddenly putting America first? That's an interesting question. America, I think that the America First comments from Donald Trump have to do with the fact it's about prioritizing and making sure that America is the number one priority when it comes to our policies, not making policies that do not benefit the United States. How are you going to protect our Social Security? I'm afraid I'm not going to get my benefits. I'm doing everything that I can. Look, I feel like Social Security is a fund that we made a promise. You've put money into, you've paid in through FICA to have Social Security benefits, and we want to make sure that's available for you. And in order to get there, and I talked about the $37 trillion that we have in national debt, this does not even address the problem that we have with Social Security. According to economists, or actually just people, CBO, Social Security will go bankrupt in the next, I think it's like 9 years. So 9 years from now, Social Security, there will be no more money in the Social Security Trust Fund. And the only money that's coming in will be money that's coming in through people that are currently paying FICA. So as a result, it will be upside down. The federal government would have to, to continue those payments, make them consistent and not have anybody receive any cuts in benefits. Congress will have to appropriate dollars from the general revenue to supplement Social Security and FICA. So we need to get our nation to a place where we can afford to do that. But in order to get there, we're going to have to cut spending in other areas today. And so that's what a lot of this conversation is about, but making sure that we don't let the American people down on the promise that they received whenever they were paying into through Social Security. And so, but here is the truth. If Congress does not supplement it, the law that was passed by Democrats, when they passed this and then they amended it, the Democratic Party, when they amended it in the 80s, they put in place an automatic reduction in benefits. So if Congress does nothing and Social Security, the trust fund, goes bankrupt, automatically, and not to scare you, but this is the fact, I'm just telling you the truth, automatically, everyone's benefits will be cut by almost 20%. And so that's not something that we ever want to get to. That's why we need to start cutting spending today so that we can make sure that everyone's benefits are covered in the future. All right. And then we have a caller. So Carol, you're on the phone. You have a question?
Yes, I do. I would like to know why everybody is so scared to death of Elon and Trump. For one thing, I've been listening to your callers here, and everything is, what am I going to do about my Social Security? You're going to cut Social Security. You're going to do this. Elon is finding out that these people are 140, 150 years old and still collecting. They don't seem to care about that, do they? I haven't heard one caller say anything about that except they didn't like that Elon was not elected. Well, who in the heck was going to elect him? He wasn't running for anything.
Carol, I like your jib. I appreciate it. Yeah, Elon is the American people did, while he wasn't on the ballot directly, Trump put him as part of his platform early on. That was very much part of Trump's platform. And when the American people voted for Trump, they voted to implement DOGE and for Elon to be to lead up the DOGE effort. You can go back and search on the internet. When was the first moment that Trump talked about hiring Elon to run DOGE? And it was months before the election. And so that was one of the key talking points. And honestly, while there's some people that are lighting their hair on fire about this, I can't tell you enough how whenever I go into the district, when I'm at a grocery store, at the airport, whenever I'm at church, everybody I talk to is excited and feels like for once, finally, the government is cutting wasteful spending. And so, yeah, I think especially from our district, he is extreme. What he's doing is extremely popular, and people are happy to see it happen. Okay, if you have questions, again, press *3 to ask a question. *3, and you'll be put in the queue for questions. All right, our next individual is William. William, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. First, Congressman, I want to thank you for the job you've been doing since you were elected. And I want to tell you I support President Trump's agenda. And I'm pleased that most Republicans are also backing that. There are a few that aren't, but I think time will take care of that. My question has to do with something that's not as critical as the topics the other callers have brought up. But I heard last week that the Secretary of Defense was considering changing the name of the department to the Department of War, and I'd like to express my opinion about that. I understand the purpose is to remind people that the Department of Defense exists to have a strong military, and that we're going to refocus on that. However, I don't think calling it the Department of War is the better choice. God created America to be a righteous leader in this world, and having a strong military, like having a strong police department, is crucial. But when they created the Great Seal of the United States, they had the eagle facing the olive branch and not the arrows for a reason. So for what it's worth, I'd rather that they keep it the Department of Defense.
I love that, William. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I think that the Trump administration is all about defense as a priority as opposed to starting new wars. He's made it very clear that he doesn't want to be involved in forever wars like previous administrations. And so I appreciate the history lesson. I think I've heard that before about how the eagle is facing the peace leaf that it's holding. But it's good to be reminded of that. Thank you. All right, we have another caller. We have Joe. Joe,
yeah,
we're ready for your question.
Yes. So can you hear me? Wasn't sure if it's coming through.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Yeah, so part of Trump's agenda during his campaign was, of course, Make America Healthy Again, the MAHA agenda. And a lot of that goes to the additives that we have in the food and a lot of agricultural practices. So with ag being such a big industry in Missouri, so being one of the biggest, let's say, agricultural chemical companies, what is your take on how that plays out, or how that should play out in Missouri over time and across the nation, specifically regarding things like folic acid treatments and glyphosate-based herbicides and that sort of thing for Missouri ag?
Okay. So related to, so here's, I don't know the specifics of that. I know about I can't even say the word, glyphosate, right? But anyway, I understand that topic and how Roundup has had impact. But without getting into the details of that, what I can tell you is, having had a meeting with Robert Kennedy Jr. And really was part of the early discussions about MAHA as he was coming on board with Trump. I was in a planning session. It was myself. This is a true story. I was pinching myself. I couldn't believe that I was in the room and invited for this. But it was a small room with Robert Kennedy Jr., Jordan Peterson, a guy named Callie Means. We had Chip Roy, myself, and Ted Cruz. And we basically, heard from Robert Kennedy Jr. about what his plans were, and it was very refreshing to hear from an individual who everyone assumes that he's just going to go in and make he's going to go in with an iron fist and make all of these things permanently banned, but he really just wants to get the science right first. He strongly believes that we need to get the money out of the system, because right now there's a lot of private money. There's the dollars from private corporations are paying for the studies that the federal government is conducting. And because of that, no one's ever funding a study on glyphosate or a study on a food additive that might be harmful. So he wants to get the system cleaned up and then let the American people decide. And if the American people find that a particular product in a food is unhealthy, then let the American people make that choice. And I thought that was a very refreshing, and I think it's a great way to go, at least especially at the beginning. So that's what's going on with MAHA right now. Our next question is from Vicky.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I will just say up front, I am of a different political persuasion than you are. However, I don't necessarily buy into all Republicans are evil, nor are all Democrats great. I don't buy into that. I'm more of a moderate. But I have to say, I know that some Republicans, one of your callers mentioned it earlier, couldn't understand why people were setting their hair on fire over Elon Musk. I'm one of those people. And the reason that my hair is being set on fire is I really have issues with billionaires being involved in our political process, even though I know that's a day-to-day occurrence, which is why I think, number one, if we got all of the dark money out of politics, we'd actually have a representative government. Okay, that's my personal bias. But with Elon Musk, I really have an aversion to someone who has so many tentacles in international business, particularly China, having access to the degree that he does. And for example, whether or not it was true, I don't know. Was he in the Pentagon on his way to a meeting to review the top secret plans for attacking China? I don't know. However, it was reported as such. And then doesn't he have a lot of business interest over there? That, I think, is wrong. Now, you talked earlier about the billionaires at Davos. Well, don't we have the billionaires in the White House now? They eat steak, we eat hamburger. Why is this any different? That's my observation. Yeah. So my question is, what can we really do? As voters, the only thing we have is our vote. And even that is sometimes in question. What can we really do to make America the America that our fathers knew, our grandfathers knew? And I know it's the past, but that's whenever I think America actually was. They produced the greatest generation during that time. Now, I don't know what's going on. Like today, we've had this back and forth nonstop, and I'm sick of it. The top secret plans on Signal or whatever it was. Do you see why people somehow kind of go, it does matter who sits in these chairs?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Vicki. I think that the difference in this is very clear that Mr. Musk and a lot of the criticism that has been placed on him, being a billionaire, being involved, is that he is in some way, ingratiating himself and benefiting off of this role. I was talking with somebody about this the other day. I thought this is like this. It's really absurd. I mean, if you think about it, the great con, I'm being sarcastic here, is that you become the most wealthy individual in the world just so you can get a job working for the government, so you can get access to money. It's not, I mean, it's, at the end of the day, to your question, that he does have some connections and he does do business with the federal government and he does business with other countries. Here is where I think we need to just have a very clear and bright line. Your taxpayer dollars should not go to anyone that is not providing value to you or or this government. And so no one should be sending money that without something being sold or benefiting. So whether it's Elon or it's Boeing building, F-18 fighters or any company that's providing a service to the federal government, that is, in my opinion, a completely different concept. If we, as the federal government, for example, said, well, because Elon is on the Trump team, we cannot use SpaceX anymore. That would be a great disservice to the American people and to your government, because SpaceX has become and they win their contracts by competitive bid. But we would be shooting ourselves in the foot to pay more money to other companies. The truth is, does he get paid? Yes, but it's because he provides a better value and service and product than the people that he's competing against. And if we're going to get back to the America that you were talking about, I think we need to return back to the America that's competitive, an America where people, survived and thrived on their merit and their work ethic. And that when you think about the greatest generation, I agree with you. That generation was amazing. But they were a generation that scrimped and saved. They knew what it was like to come out of the Depression, and they didn't want to go there again. This is a hardworking generation that wanted to create wealth. And so I hope and I pray like you that we can get back to that point. Okay, our next question comes from Kinsey.
Yeah, so I was just wondering what are the benefits of taking out the Department of Education in schools? I was just trying to understand it better.
Yeah, thank you, Kinsey. That's a good question. So there's a lot of overhead in the federal agency. Imagine that. Just look at the number of employees that they had. I think it was how many? I'll have to ask my staff to look it up. But there was a lot of employees on the federal level that were not really providing any value. They're not teaching our children. So we're eliminating that overhead. Send the money directly to the states. Let the states, which are a microcosm of experimentation, so let the states decide how to spend that money. And what's great about America and the republic that we have is that when we let the states, when we use the 10th Amendment, we let the states take control of all of these things, then states can learn from each other, and they can see when one state has done something that's a failure, they can learn by that state's failure. When they see another state that does something that's a success, they can adopt those policies and try to make that a success in their state. So I truly think that, well, the greatest benefit is that we are no longer a one-size-fits-all system where everything's being pushed down from the federal government, from people 3,000 miles away, to tell people, oh, they gave me the number. There are 4,133 employees in the Department of Education, and 2,000 were laid off. So half of those employees will be able to probably clearly go back into the workforce in the education field, but at least the overhead is no longer paying for these employees. It's going to go directly to the states and hopefully get into the classrooms and into each classroom. So, all right, next question is from Jessica. And again, we don't have anybody in the queue anymore, so if you have a question, press *3. Our next question is Jessica.
Hello?
Hi, is this Jessica?
Yes, I'm sorry, sir. Yeah, I have two questions. One, is there going to be an audit of the Federal Reserve like ex-Congressman Ron Paul wanted? I'm a libertarian conservative. I usually vote libertarian, but I have voted for Trump. And also, second question, this may be kind of off topic, but I usually believe in, of a state level government. I like everything going back to the states. I'm totally in with getting rid of the Department of Education and putting it to a state level. But when it comes to the Medicaid and everything, I think that's all should be a state level ran type of policy. But my question is, my husband's on probation for marijuana. He's doing his time. I appreciate, I guess, Governor Park or whoever reduced it to having his slate clean after he got off probation. But my issue is also with these state level when it comes to courthouses, how it's against the rules of the courthouse to record in a courthouse when it's a public traditional forum. You can't record in there. How is that coinciding with the Constitution of the United States of the First Amendment?
Okay, I've not had that question before. That's a good one. But let me first touch on the question you asked about the auditing the Federal Reserve. I 100% support auditing the Federal Reserve. In fact, Thomas Massey, one of my colleagues up here from Kentucky, sponsored the bill to audit the Federal Reserve, and I am a co-sponsor of that bill. And I think that it's long overdue. I think that was one of the best ideas out of the Ron Paul campaign, and I totally support it as well. And I think that we need to push. We need you, and we need other people to push, and to try to build momentum and awareness so that we can get this passed, and we can motivate our colleagues to take this bill up and pass it. I'm doing everything on my part. Thomas Massey's doing everything on his part. We just, a lot of times, in order to get things politically accomplished, you need people to get behind it. And so I would recommend that you do that. The other question that you had, I'm trying to remember. So the other question that you had, Jessica, what we'll do is you had a question about civil asset forfeiture, but on the call she asked for. Jessica, are you back? Can you remind me of your second question? Okay. Well, you had also asked about civil asset forfeiture, and again, I absolutely oppose civil asset forfeiture. It's ridiculous. You're prosecuting an asset, and people have to go to court to defend something that is not. There's no trial, and so it's ridiculous. Okay, and your other question, I'm sorry, I remember you asked about people filming in courtrooms. And I would have to look at that if that's illegal on the federal level. That's the purview that I would have, or that we would have on the federal level. But when it comes to state courthouses, our county courthouses, that would be a question for our local lawmakers in Jefferson City. Okay. All right. Lynn, you have a question.
Yes. Well, number one, I love your response about the Federal Reserve and Jessica's question, and your response. Perfect. It definitely needs to be audited. I want to also give huge kudos to the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. It's so overdue. It's like unbelievable how wonderful that all is. But my question is, when are people going to be held accountable?
That's a good question. So I know that they've identified individuals that have been frauding the system. They're being referred to Pam Bondi's office, and she's made it clear that if she has a case against somebody, they will be prosecuted. I'm pushing for. I think on this end, I'm pushing. I've done everything I can. A lot of what happened before. I think that people need to be held accountable for failing our government, and so we're doing everything we can. I know there's some people that I think deserve to have their security clearances stripped and maybe their federal pension stripped because they betrayed this country, and so that's something that I support as well. All right, next question. It's from Lee. Lee, you're on when you're ready.
I was wondering, with this judge that is trying to stop President Trump and DOGE from getting access to SSI, will the courts actually have the power to be able to stop the president from what he's doing or trying to do? And my second question is, does the courts have a higher authority over the president than what the president would want to do?
Yeah, I think that, again, I think we just make sure we have 5 minutes left. So if you have a question, press *3. And so to answer your question, I think it's really sad that these judges who are, district level judges are changing or stopping something from happening on the federal level that affects everyone in the United States. There is a bill that's being sponsored by Darrell Issa in the House, and I believe Senator Hawley, our own Senator Josh Hawley, that would make sure that a district level judge doesn't have the authority to change federal law on the national level. It would have to go up to the next level, which would be at least a panel of judges. So that's at least better than the situation that we have now. I do believe that while this is going through the courts and it's expensive and it's taking time, I think that the president will prevail, and I think that the Supreme Court is going to side that these judges went too far. All right, we have got just a few minutes left, and there's no callers with questions, so I'm going to go back to a Facebook question. why haven't you put out a statement on Hegseth's signal scandal? You should call for the resignation of everyone on that unsecured chat. Look, I mean, I think the fact that we're talking about it and that it wasn't covered up, or they didn't use BleachBit like previous administrations, they didn't like destroy their servers like, I don't know, the Clintons, and that they're owned up to this mistake. It's, people make mistakes. The good news is this mistake didn't harm anybody. In fact, no one was tipped off. The Houthis who were targeted, there was a successful strike, and there are terrorists that are dead. That's a good thing. So, was it a mistake on their, to include a journalist in their chat? Yes, but it was there's no bad outcome, and at the end of the day, this administration is being transparent and owning up to it. And I think it's be transparent, own up to it, and then move on and get better, do better. I think that's a better way of doing things than trying to hide and ignore and cover it up. All right, our next question is from Dakota.
Yes, I actually have two questions, if you don't mind.
Yes.
I was wondering, what is Missouri's plan to help small businesses such as trucking companies, which I own one? I don't have but 3 trucks. It's very hard to work against these bigger companies. It's hard to get business loans. It's hard to stay on the road and not go out of business like all these bigger companies are. My second question is, as far as everybody else on here talking about DOGE and all of that, why doesn't the government just make it to where we have a set limit per expense that we are trying to get to and pay for, and have the taxpayers go in, pay your taxes. Once you hit that number, the taxpayers don't have to pay on that until next year.
I'm not sure that I'm following you. Can you elaborate on that? So you're saying that we should set a number, and then what? Go ahead.
Yeah. So in the you have all this government spending. Well, all of these items that we're spending money on, if all of us taxpayers are having to spend money on those particular items, why don't they set a designated cap for the taxpayers to hit that limit, that cap limit? Then we don't have to pay on it till the following year. That way our money is not being pushed off to other things. So they got the money for, such and such item or expense. Now they've accrued all this extra money. Let's push it off to something else, but not let the taxpayers know where that money is going. Hence why DOGE is having to clean up all of government spending, and all of us taxpayers wondering, how did that money get there? What was the point in it going there if our money was set for this particular item?
Yeah. Okay. So first, Dakota, on your question about how can we help small businesses, including trucking businesses, we need to deregulate. And one of the ways, for example, the things that I support is a bill that allows for semi-trucks to increase the amount of weight that they're able to haul. Studies have shown that if you add an extra axle to the trailer, that it's actually better stopping power, and they are able to stop quicker and yet still be able to sustain a lot more weight, and it has more distribution of weight along the road. So it's better on the road. It's safer because you're able to stop quicker and you're able to haul more goods. So that is something I think is a win-win-win. The only people that do not like it are the railroads. The railroads don't like it. Why? Because they don't like competing with semi-trucks. And so But that to me is not a good reason to stop a bill just because to pick one industry over the other. It's a good policy, and I support it. And it will not only help truckers, but it will bring down the costs of so many things. If truckers are able to haul more weight. And so then your other question, I would say, let me put it in perspective. Your question about our budgeting and appropriations is a valid question. And the truth is, we are pathetic at appropriations. Congress has failed to pass the appropriations bills, basically the budget and the appropriation bills that decide where money goes. We have failed to do that, the 12 appropriation bills, for like 27 years. And what happens is we always get to the end of the year, and then leadership, because this model is designed to benefit the Speaker of the House, they wait till the last minute and they say, well, we don't have enough time to pass the budget. We have to pass the appropriation bills by September 30th or the government shuts down. And then what they end up doing is forcing through what's called a continuing resolution to continue to fund the government at whatever the previous spending levels were. Usually they add inflation onto it, but yeah, it just continues and continues and continues. And then sometimes they'll pass an omnibus bill, one big bill that these massive thousands of pages bills that the speaker, usually his team of staff are the ones that write the bill. Nobody gets to read it until they're voting on it. And that's how the process, that's how the sausage is made. And it's ugly and it's not good, and it's really not good for the taxpayers. And so we have got to return to fiscal responsibility. And that's why myself and many members of the Freedom Caucus are trying to hold the Speaker Johnson's feet to the fire and force him to do what hasn't been done in 27 years, and that is pass the 12 appropriation bills. All right, Rebecca, you are the last question of the night.
Yes, I was just wondering how you consider the Democrats the evil and not being able to balance the budget when Clinton did, but then Bush came in, gave all the tax cuts to all the rich people. Then Trump came in for 4 years, raised the deficit more than baby Bush did in 8 years, and while he was doing wars. And you think Trump is going to balance our budget when he couldn't even keep a casino going, and us taxpayers had to bail out his Atlantic City casino. So I don't have much faith in a South African billionaire, trillionaire, who did make millions off of contracts. But yes, we've got to use SpaceX because he knows how to fly a rocket and drive and make a car. So he is a smart guy, but he doesn't belong in our politics. So how in the world is Trump going to balance our budget when he just wants to give tax cuts to the richest?
Okay, that's a good question. So let me back up. You talked about the Clintons and all that, and the failures of the Bush administration, even the failures of Trump in his first administration. And honestly, I agree with you. No one is more disappointed by Republicans who let the American people down than me. That's why I ran for office. I was so frustrated that Republicans and the people that run on the Republican Party platform and our brand is that we're the party of smaller government, more efficient government, and less taxes. And yet I saw so many people run and not fight for those causes. They became part of a system that just grew government spending and grew government in its size. And so, yes, I think I'm not a huge fan of the Bush administration and their spending. I'm not a big fan. I support Donald Trump and excited what he's doing right now. I'm not a big fan of the fact that he grew our debt and our deficit. Now, a lot of that had to do with the fact that we he was facing a pandemic, and there are lessons that we've learned now out of that. But yeah, I'm not a fan of anybody, Republican or Democrat, who is going to put our kids and our grandkids in debt. Now, I will say Bill Clinton. I'm going to give Bill Clinton credit. Bill Clinton and Al Gore. And I played a video clip about this during the DOGE hearing. There was a time when Democrats shared the same view as Republicans, that we should make sure that government fits the size that the people need. And a government too big and too expensive is bad for the country. So Bill Clinton and Al Gore had an effort. They studied ways of reducing the size of government, consolidating agencies. In fact, one of the agencies they recommended in the 90s of getting rid of was the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And so they were truly trying to reform it, a lot of government. Unfortunately, a lot of their what they ended up studying and their recommendations were ultimately not adopted by that president. But one of the reasons, the dynamic that occurred at that time that allowed them to balance the budget, and a lot of people don't know this unless you really look into the math of it and the history of it, is that that you had a dynamic where you had Newt Gingrich in the House. The House controls the purse, and so not the president. So while you had Bill Clinton as the president, you had Newt Gingrich as the Speaker of the House, and Newt was the one that pushed and passed a balanced budget. Now, it was easy for them to do it, easier than normal. They didn't have to cut a lot of spending. There was a huge influx of money that came in. And what was that big influx of money? Well, that year before, they had passed a bill creating, I believe that's when the Roths were created, or at least there was a law that was changed that let people roll over money from their IRA into their Roth. When you roll over money from an IRA into a Roth, you have to pay taxes at the time of the rollover. And because that law went into effect, there were so many people that did rollovers and rolled over money from their IRAs into their Roth that the federal government received a huge influx of one-time money during that time. And that's why the budget was balanced. So it's part of it's sad, but it's true. Right now, what we're doing is more difficult. We are actually having to find places, waste, fraud, and abuse. I know there's three terms they're used so much, but we're finding areas where there's improper payments. We're finding people that have frauded the federal government. We're finding ways that we can be more efficient in using your taxpayer dollars. That's a very, very difficult process, but it's something that hasn't been done for decades, and that's what this job is, and that's why Donald Trump put one of the smartest men, most successful men in the country in charge of it. Now, I will say this: people think Elon is the one that actually has his hands on the lever. He does not. Elon is a consultant for the White House. He does the research. He has a team of people that do the research, and they're doing forensic audits. And when they find something, they give it to the president's staff, and they give it to the cabinet secretaries, and they're the ones that decide and are the ones that ultimately will implement or not implement what the DOGE team is recommending. So when people say that Elon is going in unilaterally and firing people, that is not the case. He can do nothing without Trump taking action or the executive branch. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. Want to remind people, if you'd like to learn, keep updated about what's going on, we issue a newsletter every Friday over the weekend. Usually our newsletter is released, or email, and you can sign up by going to burlison.house.gov. We also have a podcast, and you can go and watch our archive of our podcast or catch up on new episodes as they come out. And the podcast is called Fresh Freedom. So I encourage you to go and subscribe. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, X, and Rumble. So Fresh Freedom is the name of our podcast. And just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for the questions. Many of the questions that, in fact, we just put out a video where we responded to questions that we gathered from people that were protesters outside of our office. They felt like we were not there to listen to their questions and answer their questions. So we took their questions and we responded to them. So you can, if you want to watch that, you can go and watch that on my Facebook page or my YouTube page, and at Rep Eric Burlison. So on all the social medias, you can find me at Rep Eric Burlison. Just want to say thank you all. I'm honored to serve and represent the what I call God's country, the greatest place in the world to live and call home, Southwest Missouri. And it's an honor to represent you, the best people on the planet. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.